Hello everyone, I am Daniel. Here with me John, who also made a video for Theories of Everything with Kurjai Manga YouTube channel.
For me, uh, a lot of places have led me to quite a bit of dead ends. So I'm mostly referring to philosophical systems or like philosophical modes of thought, because you'll go from thinking like, oh, well, I'm a materialist, or like, this is the kind of moral philosophy that I subscribe to. And as you continue to study each one, I kept, I'm not saying I did this for each singular one, but for the ones that I did do, in my self-study of philosophy, I was reaching a lot of dead ends. And at that point, you have to start to take the wider picture of what's going on and start to figure out a new creative way of making sense out of everything. And when I came across Chris Langan, it was kind of at a very timely moment because that's when I started feeling that way towards philosophy in general. And, I was trying to figure out what exactly is the meaning of life and how should I act in the world. Um, and honestly, I think that I've gotten a lot out of the CTMU. It's given me a lot of personal stability, I guess, because growing up, I was raised Catholic, and eventually I kind of snapped out of it and I'm like, what the hell is this? And I was an atheist for a little bit, and then I became agnostic. And then I kind of hovered around agnosticism for a really long time because I could not justify it to myself because nothing that I could find would be logically convincing. So and I guess finding something that was like that was very comforting. But I think aside from like the psychological aspect of it, which I think is important to consider in any sort of like belief system you believe in, I do believe that from what I understand so far, which is constantly improving, because I wouldn't say I'm a master at the CTMU. I've been studying it for like 4 years, almost 4 years.
Oh, 4 years
And
already? Nice.
yeah, and some stuff still seems kind of like confusing to me. I do see it though as true. So the stuff that I do understand and I can like communicate back to people, that's stuff that I am satisfied with and I believe is genuinely true.
Actually, I am also has a science engineering background. I studied environmental engineering and then recently data science a little bit. So that's where I came from. I also guess you didn't look into my video as well, or if you did, you might not understand the word. Uh, but you will be surprised how close it to the CTMU background.
Mhm.
I didn't really look into the CTMU because yeah, I have really good understanding on every theories out there without looking deep dive into it
Mhm.
because yeah, I just studied those many times. Did you check John Campbell My Big Toe? I think he calls that. Did you check that?
No, I've only heard of it. I haven't looked at it in any detail though.
Yeah, because it's interesting. The You mentioned Tyler Goldstein, the CTMU,
Hmm.
and John Campbell is also similar. Actually, I would say the basic idea as well with Roy Dobson. I made the base one interview just yesterday, I guess, or before that. It's also they are around this same idea.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
actually, my theory just what brings into the table a little bit more is a little bit more prediction and a little bit more historical view, because they seems to does not touch those topics, but to understand and explicate, actually you would need you you probably better if you do that. And maybe I will show that for you later on. uh, so I just forget where we was last time, but it actually, so you went on the your worldview, actually stumbled upon the CTMU, and then just it was appealing for you, right? Basically.
Yeah, yeah. When I read the 2002 paper, and at first I was like, "Oh my God, none of this I can understand like one bit." But the stuff that I did understand, it was like, "Wait a minute. This is stuff that like I understand from my own model, but like I've seen no one else describe it." And it's probably because at the time I was very young and uneducated, so I didn't have the experience to see that other people were interested in this kind of stuff. But it resonated with me at a very deep, intuitive level. And I thought like, okay, well, you know, I honestly do believe what he says about his intelligence. So there's either something here or there's still something there, but there's just some error. And so, regardless of either one, I'm going to benefit either way because, I'm going to learn something from somebody who's smarter than me.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
actually that's the whole point. I For me as well, I just use my theory to learn. If it will points out it will be wrong, all right, I just learned for that and from the mistakes. So
Right. Yeah.
I think that was the best idea I can came up, and then I will try to improve and we will see. And also I didn't mention, I also grew up as kind of Christian background, and echo, but
Yeah.
I didn't get from the very early ages. I said it doesn't add up. It's just
Hmm.
too too hard. Well, for the Bible, it doesn't really help if you do not use it as more broad, general, metaphoric
Mm.
sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's If they don't do that, that's just, I cannot buy it with scientific rigor, I guess. Or
Yeah, I agree pretty
and
much.
But interesting, it might be also in metaphoric way. It's close probably for every theory, but it's in this sense and how they try to apply in the everyday life. Because what I also would like to give for the people to have some guidance, as you also mentioned, the CTMU already gives you a little bit of more confidence, a little bit more solid worldview, but you can use for your everyday life. Um,
Yeah.
and this I feel in my life as well, as I have my worldview a little bit better. I have more confidence, and I am just open to do more things than before. I said, all right, I am not enough, I don't know enough, I am just a small cog
Hmm.
in the machine. And yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think uh yeah, I think that's highly important because now we're not just talking about philosophy, we're talking about self-development and trying to live a better life. Um and or just taking things in a more practical way. And I would pose this to anyone watching this or listening to this. If the stuff you're learning hasn't um at least leaned you in a more practical, trajectory in some way, even if it's just a tiny bit, then you're doing something or I wouldn't say wrong, but I would reconsider what you're doing. So, I've been a part of philosophy circles online for quite a while, and some people are constantly stuck in the loop of ideas. But when does that actually turn into improving your life, right? And that's ultimately what I think it should be about personally. That's my view. But some people, if they want to stay stuck, constantly jumping from like one to the other and then making no progress, then so be it.
Yes. Yes. All right. So I should agree as well. It's uh all right. You mentioned you were in philosophical, you know, maybe Discord channels and around
Yeah,
those
Discord
too.
channels.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned you started around 4 years to really deep dive in the CTMU. That's correct, right?
Uh, about 4 years ago, oh gosh, it was like uh yeah, yeah, almost exactly 4 years ago because it was near my birthday and my birthday is coming up. So
Happy birthday.
thank you. That was the day. That was the day where I discovered Chris Langan because I thought one day I think I was I don't know what I was thinking about that day, but I was like, I wonder who has like the highest IQ or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And because even if it's like somehow a fraud, like you can learn from anybody. It doesn't matter if they're high IQ, low IQ. It's really a superficial label in my view. So I'm like, okay, well, who does like supposedly have the highest IQ? I found Chris Langan, and then he starts making these like really bold claims about like solving or proving God mathematically. And I'm like, oh, okay, now you have me very interested because I'm a very mathematical guy. And that's what mainstream religion they don't have mathematics, right? Most of them aren't like giving their believers like math worksheets for their faith. So I read his paper and that all happened over the course of the day. So yeah, that's kind of where I start keeping track of my CTMU study.
All right. That's nice. Okay. Um, maybe I will explain my theory a little bit, and let's see where we go from that part because you will
Hmm.
you will chime in with the CTMU and we will see. Uh, because I wish to talk with Chris Langen at one point. Let's see if there is something else. So so basically, what I'm claiming now, or just start to understand, is if we say a multicellular organism as ourselves is a bunch of unicellulars, and let's say this transition started around 2 billion years ago. Let's say 2 billion years ago on Earth there wasn't multicellular organism, right? And then in these 2 billion years we evolved into multicellular organisms. What I try to figure out is what's happening now with the multicellular organisms, and seems like we as humans we start to build cities, and I make a claim. This is really similar, but what should have happened in 2 billion years ago. We are in the starting position on that transition. So, so how you start to understand this is probably that unicellular level started in a two-dimensional way, probably on the underground of water or close to the shores, and then they started to get a three-dimensional way. First, stationary, then they started to move, and then we get here on actually land we have the multicellular organizations and ecosystem, and in this sense CT is also just that. It's how I call, you know, the multicellular is a collective intelligence of unicellulars. The CTs is start to be a collective intelligence of multicellulars, or I would say the ant colony or a beehive as well. It's similar ideas, a little bit more description needed. And what is interesting here is this range is 2 billion years ago. I go deeper in this sense, and let's imagine what happened 4.6 billion years ago. And in this regard, I start to talk about an atomic world started to be unicellular. And why this is all important and why I can make these claims, because interestingly enough, in a multicellular organism, it's around 100 trillion cells, and well, it's, you know, in the big whale, it's much higher, but we talking about averages, right, in physics, and approximations. And then we use this 100 trillion, and if I say this to the cell, from the cell to atomic, interestingly enough, the cell also has around 100 trillion atom inside. And I do this until 30.8 billion years ago, where I assume there was the time when the atomic range started, in at least in this area of space-time, and that started at that point, and took, so 30.8 billion is, as we know, the Big Bang or the starting point at that time. 4.6 is the unicellular stuff, so atomic unicellular. 1.5 or 2 billion years ago, that started the multicellular, and now we are here when we start to multicellular level. So this actually, it looks like an exponential curve, and that needs a little bit more explanation. But my prediction is we are looking back to the for the future, right? And we stop here because we have the actual knowledge in this sense. In below that, I assume under the quark realm as well, or atomic realm, there is a quarkic. We have some ideas about that, and below the quark as well. So in this sense, I say there is into the infinite that way. And also in the future, we will see this pattern unfolds. So basically, it's everywhere infinite in the future, at least in theory, but we don't see the infinity because we have limits as a human being or any entity in the future. So this is a little bit of a pitch about my theory. And I think if we take the consciousness level, what CTMU describes, I do similar things about that, because let's say now we are the humans has the consciousness as we understand. At the unicellular time, I claim the unicellulars at that point was similarly conscious and as us, because they had to communicate, they had to cooperate, and they had to organize themselves on that level. We still see unicellulars, but they move towards something, so it is not really hard to imagine there is a consciousness in that sense. Michael Levin is touching on that topic, and more scientific understanding goes towards that way. So basically, the consciousness, if we compare in the human sense and the unicellular sense, we can say, all right, it is really similar. What happened between? We went from the the unicellular started to organize itself. They started to cooperate and started to have these city-like organisms, which is not conscious at this moment. But after they started to build up the membranes and finished up this whole process, they became the conscious multicellular entity. So now we have the city level, which is also doesn't have the consciousness at this point, but in the future I imagine that might happen as well in a three-dimensional space, and they start to move. First they doesn't move, and then they start to move. It's a hard concept at this moment, but this is the logical background what I deal with. So basically there is an exponent. It's 1/3, closely 1/3 of the steps, and in the amount of let's say if we start with the atomic way, there is 80 and 100 trillion for one entity on the cellular level, cellular for the multicellular, 80 100 trillion on that one, and we just started on this city level. So that's the exponential, but here we just level off because we are not in that level. We didn't reach that endpoint. So that's, interestingly enough, it's in the consciousness level I deal with. On all the way down I deal with the atomic and the quarkic level. I also assume this kind of a consciousness pattern. So this is why I would claim the CTMU in this regard is really close to my theory. I have more deep analysis on what is happened and why this is happened. So just a little, even it's a little bit longer than I expected, overview about my theory. I didn't publish this, only just my theory on the phase one published yet, but I am writing my book and writing an article, or we will see how that will work out. And also my language is not English, right? So I have to deal with these deep topics, actually really harder to explicate in English than just a chit chat, because that's not that hard. So how do you feel about that? What do you have any comments? Did you see any correlation with CTMU?
Yeah. So I definitely see the correlation there with the CTMU, like you said, how it relates to the CTMU's view of consciousness. I do have a question. Yeah, I have a question. So whenever you say that basically, if you go down to like the quark level and then even deeper than that, uh, you say it's like infinite. Do you mean like it keeps going infinitely?
Yes.
Okay. So, and then similarly
for the future.
For the future. Okay, gotcha. So then a follow-up question for that would be, I guess,
how and why, right? Or something like that.
Well, yeah, there's the how and why, but then also for me, how would you conceive of an origin for that? So because it resembles like a Tower of Turtles type situation. Is there some sort of like not causal regress, but ontological regress that accounts for the existence of that continual, falling down and going up in complexity?
Yeah. No. So I have to. Yeah, it's probably that's the hardest part in my theory, because that's have to have a really good explanation and a good foundation to just grasp. But what I'm trying to imply here is is we are dealing with observers. The observer try to understand the world. Let's say in the 2 billion years ago, the unicellulars had an understanding level of the world in this big spherical sense.
Hmm.
They started to cooperate together, and in the first times they didn't improve this understanding really just a little bit, but until after they started to actually move, and they started to have eyes in this systematic level, they suddenly increased their understanding and the experimental sphere like exponentially on this level.
Okay.
And what we are doing right now, so now we have this as a human, but
Yeah.
humans also have limited sense in this way. Let's say we are chimps in this regard, chimpanzees. But what humans more than a chimpanzee? We have society, we have humanity as a whole. So how you would think about this? Humanity as a whole is a new system, and
Hmm.
it starts to query the world, right? In human level, we didn't see stars, we didn't see galaxies with our eyes, because the only limit we had is how far we can see and what not, that's the sphere. But now as humanity, we have this bigger sense of understanding. So basically that's the way. So that's the logical steps, and then you appear to the human. And now what we are dealing with is our best understanding of the world, and on the quartic level, that's the last part we can see. So as I imply here, the next organism which will be in the compared to the unicellular to multicellular, compared to human multicellular to the multicellular, it will be much bigger again, and they will be able to see what we didn't see now. But humans
Yeah.
won't see anymore, because we just Gauss distribution, normal distribution,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? So we basically, what I'm talking about, the normal distribution goes in this exponential level. I will just actually show that, if you follow me. If you have questions, just let me know.
Okay.
So it's here. So here, if you say there is an exponent here, and in the Gauss Gaussian way, let's say here is the human or multicell, and we use this as the normal distribution. We go back in the unicellular time, 1/3. They have the Gaussian distribution this way. Go
Hmm.
back, yeah. So you actually see this, right? So
Yeah.
so this is the time of this way, but it's always our perception, but looks back and looks into the future. So yeah, it's my theory is just I spent like 10 years on this, so I didn't able to, or couldn't explicate in any way. I just waited a little bit because I wanted to be totally understand what I'm saying. So
Hmm.
I have also this also talks about the time, which is another big topic. Um, Let me know if you have questions, or you
Um,
would like to go a little bit more deeper.
yeah, before we touch on time, I do have some quick
Yeah.
questions. So the first one's I think is relatively short. The second one is potentially more complex.
Sorry, we have nine
So
minutes, so maybe.
gotcha. Okay, so my first question is when it comes to the heat death of the universe, does that mean that the this like increase in complexity, right? Like the exponential curve getting steeper and steeper and steeper, does that mean it's going to eventually stop, or what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's not in this sense. The universe is not going to be in a heat death because
Hmm.
if you use, I'm not sure. Did you heard about the Grabby aliens model for Robin Hanson?
Wait, what is it?
Grabby aliens.
No,
Okay,
never heard of that.
you should check that out definitely. But so what the universe does at the moment, basically, it stops in our way because
Hmm.
at the last 100 years, what was our development? If we just continue in this pace, we will be in a galactic civilization in 1000 years, let's say maximum. Even we don't increase the the change, just this 100 years, and so 10 times more this we can be in a galactic civilization. But as we as I described, this is actually this is also Ray Kurzweil idea on singularity, just a little bit more advanced way. So as we do this, the exponential expansion is goes in this way, and we just transform every material in the universe right now. Like my mother says, 170 million years from now, it will be the next step in this realm. Like we have been in the 2 billion years from the cell to the multicell, then the multicell multi-multicell will be 170 billion or 70 million, sorry. So it's a little bit more complex how it is, but basically one third of the 500 billion years from before. The basic idea here is, even if we say 2 billion divided by 3, then what is that, 700 million years from now, basically will be this biggest entity, but it will be transferred or transformed everything in the universe at that time. So won't be uh, galaxies and stars in the way right how we know it right now. It's hard concept, but
Hmm.
this is how I start to see the world, and I have to explicate for myself and just start to connect every dots I have, and I also do not want to claim the cosmological model and physics model is holds water. But in the unicellular, multicell, and city level, my theory can be defended by science. So on the fringes, all right, I have a theory with what can be used as a possibility, but that's still just a theory. So in this sense, everything will be changed in that, let's say, 700 million years from now, because the universe basically for us it's just so low volume or slow. But maybe maybe black holes will be harder, and Cepheid variables or neutron stars, but the regular planets, it's we will just transform them to anything else we want.
Okay. All right, gotcha. Um, I think that kind of answered my second question. My second question was kind of related to it was related to Gödel's incompleteness theorems, but
Yeah,
rather than getting into that, I'm more interested to hear about time. So I know we're running low on time,
yeah, all right.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
we if you wish, we can touch time. Uh, I need to start another Zoom call. Yeah, no problem. So actually, okay, just one moment. Yeah. So why I started on this journey as well, I wanted to have a better worldview for myself. I wanted to understand this whole situation. And once I just figured out something, I started in this whole theory. But I won't deep dive in that one. We will focus on the time aspect. So about the time, let's say for us humans, if I move my hand from here to there, let's say it's 1 meter per second the speed, or 1 second. For if I say inside me is a cell, right? And if I start to understand on or build up what the cell experience could be, we can say the cell experience is experiencing this movement so slow they don't really understand as a movement or something. It's more general stuff for them. So if we go back in time 2 billion years ago, this was the time for the cellular realm, right? So the cell, in this case, they had their own pace of time. Now we have our pace of time, in this case, faster. But if you imagine the whole system, whole cellular system is in this sense really faster than us. They are just doing their stuff really fast for that perspective. Then for us 1 second is for them slow, but yeah, it's really hard to even explain. I'm not sure, did you get something out of it?
I was starting to, but I guess I could kind of tell it was getting difficult to explain.
Yeah, so yeah, just maybe start a little bit. So let's say for us humans, we move this hand by 1 second or 1 meter per second, and we live in cities. For us, we stay in this way of living our life in 1 meter per second. If we imagine we will be in the future in this bigger entity, which is around 10 kilometer in diameter, then for the city inside us, we will be fast moving, let's say, stuff. For the city itself, it will experience the time same as we experience for ourselves, because that they will be the observer on their time. But if they query themselves and look inside, they will see these humans or multicellulars, they move fast in our body, right? But for us, a city, let's say if I start to do this 1 meter per second, my latest calculations around 175,000 times slower for the city. So if we imagine a similar entity as a human, and it's move their hands, it will take like 1 second multiplied by 170,000. I don't know what was that. It's 80 years or something. So, or even more. So basically, for a human being, if I sit on the multicellular biggest organism hand, for us it's 80 years when this is going that way. But for the multicellular bigger organism, it's 1 second on this level. So, well, it's really hard concept, and this is where things needs to get more visualization, because without that it's just too hard to. It's basically, I would say, it's emergent relativism or something like that. So
Yeah,
so
that's what it seems like.
that's basically needed for my theory, and if you grasp this idea as I, you will see the world differently, and if it's true, that will be shocking.
I mean, yeah, I don't really have too much to add on. I guess most of my brain power is just letting it marinate. Um, so it seems very, I guess, material focused, right? Because you're talking about the evolution of these systems. And I'm curious to know if you have some sort of explanation for well, actually just in general, what your thoughts are on the mind, the origin of the mind. Do you see it as epiphenomenal, or, could you elaborate?
Yeah, I definitely could. And well, first of all, about the consciousness is similar topic, right? So
Hmm.
what I'm basically what I'm doing here is I claim we are really similar entities in every level. The tools what we use may be different. For example, as a multicellular, we use brains as our computational system, and that is a function in our cellular collective intelligence, like in a function in a city, like the major and the city center. That's similar concepts here. So the what is the exact mechanic is not the important. The output is similar. So in the unicellular sense, they have the DNA, sorry, in English, DNA. I assume in the nucleus, and the DNA functions as the brain in our multicellular level as a computational uh, idea, right, or tool. And in the unicellular way, you also see functions, like there is a central function, the nucleus, and there is another function, mitochondrium, and microtubulus, and whatnot. But the center idea as well, it's similar tools for similar stuff. In this way, the mind and the consciousness. So in this sense, the consciousness and the mind emerges on after it starts to have boundary, membrane, and when it starts to have more, outer senses. As a tree, also a multicellular organism, and has many cells, right? But they don't move, and they don't have the senses as we are, because they don't need to. So interestingly enough, in parallel, they also exist and we also exist. Well, we coexist, right? So they are the sessile stuff, what they don't move, and the what we are moving, right? And there is also another level of the prey and another one, who eat the prey. And then this is a emergent phenomenon. In this regard, our mind or our consciousness is, we know and we can experience, but in a city, if we try to understand that, we cannot really, and we say they are not conscious because there is nothing to add. But in later on, when they start, theoretize, when they could be in a three-dimensional space, and they also start to move, and they also have eyes and whatnot, they build up the self-inquiry and build up this consciousness state where we are. They start to communicate again, and they start to move. So basically, this is a cycle, goes all in all, and a little bit more. It is a materialistic, but in the levels, the cooperation is the key here. So cooperation, communication is what drives everything here, and I claim this is into infinite and into the future as well. But we have the limited sense, and every time, just whoever the observer, they see as far as they can, and after that, a cellular doesn't look outside of ours on our body. They just inside the whole system, right? We, as we'll be in the future, we won't really move probably. We stay in our position, and we won't move. We will be fooled into that system. We don't really know what else to do, and just live our life, die, and reproduce. So this is the whole cycle. I hope it's explained something for you.
Yeah, that was a lot more clear. So I have a question about the okay, so you said wherever the observer is, they're basically confined to that level and they can't basically see past their own level. Would you say, trying to think of how to word this, but would you say there's a way of expanding if you're at a particular level? So say for instance we're humans, we're at that level. There's a way of expanding beyond the limits, not in a way where you're actually going past the limits, but you're acknowledging the fact that the limits are there in the first place, which is in itself at least some sort of uh, surpassing of those limits. Because you could argue like people that don't recognize that they're going to be more limited than people that do. If that makes sense, I might have to reword that.
Yeah, I think I understand you. I don't really know the answer. What I could make up is if you imagine this as the unicellular, could talk with the multicellular. It doesn't. It cannot. It's so far to each other. They don't have the ability to talk to each other. If in a unicellular, some of it understand better than others, yeah, they can. And in a human way, we also start to understand, who spend more time in these topics, they start to understand better what is going on, and they might have some better ability to live their life. But the majority, it's always been in the middle, in the Gaussian and normal distribution. So it's this normal distribution. It starts to go a little bit farther, but it levels off because we will be inside the future body. And here is the debate. It will be purely mechanical and AI driven, or we will have some role still inside it. That's still debatable, but either way, my theory is still that open. It can be AI, or it can be just materialistic or biological um, based, because maybe that's also the case for at least the next level. So this is this is my answer on that. Anything? Did I
Yeah, I
answer?
guess
Uh-huh.
kind of like a follow-up. So you as a human who have created this theory, it's kind of like an observer, uh it's like a form of metacognition. So the observer is observing the fact that this whole process is happening. Do you think that's something that strictly uh do you think okay, well, I guess do you think that lower levels can do that in a more general or abstract way?
You mean the cellular, right? Like a unicellular
Yeah, 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 yeah.
also do? Yeah, that they have to do it in a similar way, or somewhat similar way than how we do it, because they couldn't. Well, it's hard, but mainly I think it couldn't be. They couldn't be here. So we couldn't be here as the multicellulars if the unicellulars did not reach that level. The level here is they have to able to communicate and cooperate, and that's allow them to build up this bigger system. As I said, the unicellular has this small amount of
Yeah.
sphere, and as they increase the cooperation and the system they see, they are increasing it, and it's really hard, but probably that one, that's or something like that.
No, you said enough there that that makes sense and I get it. Yeah. I guess in terms of like comparing it to the CTMU, I would say the main difference is the approach and the focus. So your approach and your focus is more towards detailing the evolution of each of these different strata. Um, and then the CTMU, it tries to describe things in very, 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 very general focus. So it would try to say something about like, okay, well, you have this like Tower of Turtles situation going on here, and it would say that there would have to be some way where there's a medium, like an ontological medium, that accounts for itself, that allows for that Tower of Turtles to exist. Um, but yeah, I just think there's nothing really. I don't think there's like a fundamental big difference.
uh, Interesting. Do you I don't know about the CTMU. It should deal with the end of this Tower of Turtles, right? Because
Well,
I think that may be a difference, big difference here.
yeah, yeah, that's the only one. So
Yeah.
I would say the response or what the traditional like CTMU response would be like is well, it can't be a Tower of Turtles. It has to regress at some point. And so then you would either describe how it regresses or uh this is what I would do personally. I would acknowledge that the medium that the system, that whole Tower of Turtles is taking place in, it has to account for itself in some way. Uh and that in itself is what explains the existence of the Tower of Turtles. Um, that way, you're able to let it go ad infinitum. Otherwise, if you try to like show that it regresses at some point, then you're showing that it wouldn't go ad infinitum, at least not in the way that you're talking about.
Yeah. All right. maybe if you wish to have a little bit of thought experiment, I have two for you.
Sure.
So so let's start with the easier one. So let's say you are starts from this position as a human, and you step one step further, and after this step you step one half further, right? And this you do in the infinite. How far you get?
Oh, is this kind of like a
Yeah,
Zeno's
yeah,
paradox
kind of,
type
yeah,
thing? Okay. Well, if let's lay some assumptions and make sure we're on the same page,
yeah,
right? Of the meaning behind the thought experiment. Whenever you say there's movement, you're meaning like uh there's some delta x, right? Like there's some delta x that this person can go,
yeah.
and there's a destination. If that's able to go,
There is no destination, let's say.
or yeah, sorry.
So yeah,
Well, I mean, in a sense, there is a destination for from each step, but not as a whole. At
yeah,
least that's what it seems like if we're going to allow like an infinite line uh type situation. So I
yes.
guess
I hope you understand. It's it's just thinking about stuff. So go ahead and we will talk about that.
I mean it's kind of a similar process as uh okay, it's like saying, well, sorry, real quick, before
Yeah,
I
go.
say that, I want to make sure uh I heard what you said correctly. So you said how much distance do you cover?
Yes, let's say yeah.
Okay, how much distance do you cover? Right. That's kind of like saying, okay, if you have like the set of all positive integers and then you start manually counting them, it's analogous. So like, okay, one, two, three, and it's infinite in both
Uh,
directions.
no, all right. So the distance is important. So we
Okay.
have the first step, then we have the half step on top on this first, and we add up everything. Sorry, I didn't implement that. So we add up from the 0 point where we started, right? Because my question is how far you get from this point, from the starting point. We get one step and then half of the step and then one quarter.
Okay. It depends on the time period. Because you can go like arbitrarily
Let's go.
as
We are
far
going
away.
into at infinitum in time.
I mean, it's I don't know if that's like an operation that you could do, but like you could say that it is because that's analogous to saying like, okay, well, let delta x approach zero, or like let x approach infinity, right? And this actually touches on something very interesting Chris Langan has mentioned, which is like he's kind of hinted at the fact that he's very unsatisfied with calculus and these kinds of formulations, where you have an infinite process or like a process which is infinite, but then on the one hand uh, trying to find some sort of resolution because it's like I still think my analogy kind of holds. If you're counting like the whole set of like uh positive integers. Oh well, how far from zero do you get? Well, it depends on when you tell me to stop. And then you're just like, okay, we'll just keep going. If I just keep going, then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, right? So, but if it keeps getting bigger and bigger, then that movement of expansion it implies that it's allowed to expand in the first place. What is it expanding into? You know.
Yeah, all right. I will reveal the what I know.
Okay.
So basically, if we do this, you get in the infinite steps. At the end of the steps, you should get to the second step, because we have one, then half of that, so 1.5, then half of that 1.75, half of that 1.8. So this approaches the 2 on this level. So it's a logistic or exponential closing.
Oh, sorry. I missed that part.
But
But I mean it's still
it's
I don't think it would have changed my response.
yeah, it's not I also just wanted to, have this as some tools to have good arguments, because I also studied calculus. You probably also studied calculus because we are engineers and science background. So, but still, I couldn't do it just on my own it easily. But in this experiment, this is kind of help you to understand better about this everything. So the second way of this, the time is infinite. You have the destination too, but you can stay in the time sentence, or sorry, my time sense. If we start with 1 second, I go this one, let's say half of that second, how far I go. So in time we get this 2, but in that sense the space will be infinite. So it goes two ways actually. And also, as you mentioned, this is kind of a Zeno paradox, but I think it's really really nice, and it's easy to not forget or go inside the philosophical questions about the Zeno paradox, because that is just a little bit more crazy to think about. This is not that hard. So another thought experiment. It's really nice, I guess. I just thought about this recently. So if you imagine a box in front of you, which is empty, then sorry, do you hear? Follow me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I raise my hand in this way first. This is the starting point, and I raise my another hand into this box. We had nothing, and now we have this way of let's say this is one something or everything inside. I also can do in this way. I can half this distance, also half this distance, half that distance, and half that and half that, until I cannot get closer, let's say closer to my two hands each other, until I touch, or I think I don't touch actually. And then I see what was the last part in this way. Let's say it's 4 millimeter, and in the past, let's say 4,000 years ago, only people had this precision. And if I build up from this to that point, I can say how many millimeters in this regard, or how many steps, how many turtles. If I try to do this today, and we use every tools we can, let's say we use electron microscope. Let's say we use electron microscope, then I can close my hand really really closely, and I can build up this small amount of smallest step we can measure, and I build up this, how much distance is this. And this is also represent the knowledge sphere of every system. So as a humans and humanity, we approach the better and better resolution, but we cannot reach the infinite resolution. We have to stop, and this is also confines our understanding of reality. So I am starting to assume we close to that point. We almost reached our level of understanding or precision, until we have something else we cannot. Maybe the artificial intelligence will be helpful in this regard, but now we are stuck, and this is, I think, where the quantum mechanics and physical theories just breaks up, and that's why they are really stuck in this whole theories of everything and theories in general. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I understand better now. I guess the profundity of both of those things that you were talking about.
All right. I hope that's at least something.
At first, I was a little bit confused. I was like, wait, this seems like Zeno's paradox.
Yeah,
But yeah, I got you.
it's a little bit more, but yeah, it's hard to in these deeper topics to talk. I have to improve myself. All right, John. I think we can end. It will 7 minutes. Do you have something else? I'm really thank you to just listening to me. Uh,
No, I don't have any further thoughts. I think we had a great discussion. I like how active you are in the community. I think I saw one of your latest videos. Somebody was like commending you for the role that you play in the community, and I agree. I think yeah, I think what you do on your channel is good, and yeah,
thank you. That's I wish to at least I wish to do this, serving or something. Hopefully we will. Actually, I try to organize theories of everything conference. Hopefully we can do it later and yearly. So we will see what comes out of it.
that would be cool.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you very much.